Welcome to the Matthew Moran podcast. Here you will find a series of in-depth conversations with the world's best nature photographers, filmmakers, conservationists, editors, writers, and publishers. You will get an insight into the lives of creative professionals and industry experts, what goes on in their minds, how they approach their work, and how they make it pay. The podcast also looks at the role that photography and filmmaking plays in helping to raise awareness about the global plight of species. And despite the depressing statistics, we look for solutions, what we can all do to contribute to conservation. All my guests give up their precious time and are incredibly generous of spirit. So this is my chance to share these conversations with you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This week, my guest is Hannah Stitfall. Hannah is a wildlife producer, filmmaker, and presenter. Her warm style reaches all ages and backgrounds and covers a range of topics from wildlife on our doorsteps to exotic animals further afield. And she inspires many to speak up and get involved in protecting nature. With her unique style, Hannah has garnered quite a following. In fact, she's thrilled that a significant number of her audience are not your archetypal wildlife lover. She describes them as normal people and feels it more important to capture the hearts and minds of those not directly linked in the world of wildlife photography and conservation. In this episode, we find out how a Roald Dahl book inspired her love for wildlife, the buzz she gets from animal encounters, and her route to becoming a much-loved BBC Springwatch presenter. And on a side note, something new for 2021, I've teamed up with Nature Through the Lens, a fantastic and free online resource covering everything from tutorials and equipment reviews to workshops and inspirational articles from some of the world's leading nature photographers. NTTL also sell a range of ebooks for more in-depth learning and includes topics about breaking into the business of wildlife photography, essential guides to using filters, and tips and trips for astrophotography. And if you want to purchase any of this amazing content, you can receive a 10% discount by using the code MAT10 at checkout. That's MATT10. Just head over to naturettl.com to find out more. Right, that's enough from me. On with the show. Hannah, welcome along. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I've been tracking you down for a number of months now, I think. But, you know, with all my elite guests, well, I think you're one of those. Yeah, they're hard to get. So I really appreciate you coming on. We're going to have a lot of fun. And you're living in Cornwall now, right? Is it snowing down there right now? It must be pretty beautiful.
Do you know what, Matt? I've been waiting for snow for so long, and there's not a single sign of it as of yet. I mean, I live in Newquay, so I always say we've got our own climate here in Newquay. It can be snowing everywhere else in Cornwall. It won't be here. So I'm waiting with bated breath, but I think I'm going to be waiting a little while.
And we were just talking a bit before we went on air about you being in lockdown, kind of now getting a little bit tired of it, but you've been certainly making the most of it. You said you've been busier than ever, but yeah, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last year, I know we spoke about me coming on here quite a while ago, but it's just been a busy time. I mean, it's weird to think that 2020, I was meant to be out of the country for pretty much 6 months of the year, and when COVID hit, myself and my cameraman were in Sri Lanka. And at the time, COVID was bubbling, but nobody knew what it would become. And we managed to get the first shoot done, went up north to an elephant sanctuary, and then that was it. The world was shutting down, it was quite scary, especially being abroad then. And then you've got, your boss ringing you up going, look, we need to get you back because everyone's going into lockdown. Nobody even knew what lockdown was then. And we were in a foreign country and we were just very aware that we had to get back very, very quickly. And that 24 hours that journey back was nuts. And as I was telling you before we came on here, I suffer with allergies. And myself and my cameraman, we got the flight to Dubai airport, and that was one of the last airports open in the Middle East. So we had to get there. And I started sneezing on the plane just through allergy. And you've got to remember, at the time, nobody knew what the symptoms of COVID was at all. It was just a global pandemic. And when I start sneezing, I can't stop. I was getting death stares from everybody on the plane, just staring at me. And we had no tissue. So my cameraman, Ben, got out one of his lens cloths and gave it to me. So I was using that on my face, and everyone was just looking at me like they were going to kill me.
Thank God for the cameraman. Most expensive tissue you've ever used.
Totally, yeah. So anyway, so then came back. But to be honest, it's been an amazing year. It's been an amazing year for British wildlife conservation and communication, and coming back and obviously working on the watches. Because of lockdown, it turned it into something completely different, and we found so many new ways to communicate with the general public about British wildlife issues, and people have been more engaged with it than ever before, which is fantastic.
I think it's brilliant, isn't it? And I think there's been such a thirst for it. I think that's been one of the great things about the pandemic, is people really appreciating wildlife in their own country. And whether that's a park, a balcony, or, you know, where you live, where you can walk in some nice fields or go down to the beach, that is something that we would have taken for granted before. And now we've got it. And I think, and I think also it really demonstrates our resilience. You know, BBC did an amazing job of pulling all of those programs together, and I think it was their recognition of a real responsibility for the mental health of the nation, perhaps.
Totally and utterly. And do you know what? All of a sudden, what us conservationists and naturalists and wildlife people have wanted for so long, all of a sudden, everybody wanted to know what that snail was in their garden. What is that? What's that beetle? How many species of ladybird have we got? And it sounds silly, but especially with younger people, they all of a sudden became so interested, and that's what we've wanted for years. Because if you get them with the small things, then that will grow into something else. And hopefully we've made a lot of people more interested in wildlife and conservation, you know?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And have there been any talks, I don't know, with the BBC or, you know, with the other people you work with, your friends and colleagues, about how to continue that interest and foster that learning when, you know, restrictions do ease and people can travel again? Because we don't want to go back to where we were. We want to continue this love and celebration of British wildlife.
No, I don't know. I think we're just going to have to see how it pans out. But hopefully this last year, because so many new and different people have come to British wildlife and become interested in its conservation, they're interested in what's in their garden. They want to know what's down their street. What is that bird on the roof? Because this has now been going on for a year. Now, hopefully that has become ingrained in them and that won't be lost. But we're just going to have to keep pushing across social media, keep pushing with our programming just to remind people. But I hope, and I do feel, that it's made a lasting impression on a lot of people that normally it wouldn't have. So that can only be seen as a positive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back to you talk about getting young people engaged with nature. Can you tell us a bit about your first brush with nature as a youngster and what you remember of it and how you got hooked?
Well, I'm not going to lie. My way into nature, natural history is not the normal route, should we say. You know, I had a very normal upbringing. I wasn't surrounded by wildlife, very average, normal, not wildlife holidays, you know. And
You mean you didn't go to the Maldives, you know, on summer holidays?
Very bog standard, you know, nothing out of the ordinary, really. But my first book when I left play school was Fantastic Mr. Fox. And I remember that, and that spawned my interest in wildlife. But then I lost it for many, many years. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no interest in wildlife. I was a complete rebel at school, you know. I was in Halford's car park drinking White Lightning, let's be honest. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But my parents didn't pressurise me to go to university at all. And I ended up travelling for about 6 years, you know.
Wow.
I hitchhiked across Australia. I went all through. I've cleaned more pub toilets than most people have had hot dinners, let's be honest, right?
I was going to ask how you made that pay.
God, I did chalet hosting, you know, caravan cleaning, like a lot of cleaning, you know. There's a lot of cleaning in my youth, Matt, let's be honest. But during that time, it was when I fell in love with the natural world, and going to all of these places through Central America, South America, I could see its destruction. And I was like, this isn't right. This is not right at all. So when I came back to the UK, I knew I wanted to do something with wildlife, but I had no idea what. I definitely didn't think I was clever enough to do anything sciencey. God forbid. That was like my worst thing at school. But I applied to do a foundation degree in wildlife here in Newquay, and it's Plymouth University that ran the course, and I got in. And then I ended up doing a full zoology degree, got first class, but that's because I was interested.
Amazing.
It was a few years later, and I was interested in the subject. I wanted to make it work. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but then I started delivering talks and helping out at Newquay Zoo, and people started saying to me, they were like, this is what you should do. You should get into communicating, because when you talk, people really have a good time. You engage people. So I was like, oh, maybe I should think about filmmaking. Maybe, oh, okay, all right. And then now I'm here.
It's such a great story, isn't it? It seems like passion was your true driver.
Yeah, it was. And I think, you know, I think it's cruel to ask teenagers what they want to do with the rest of their life when they're 18. I mean, most of them want to go to Thailand and drink buckets on the beach. I mean, I know I did, and that's what I did. But at the same time, that influence from around the world made me realise how much we were destroying our planet and how much species were suffering. I mean, you know, I remember seeing people taking elephant rides and with the elephants chained up, and I was just like, that's not right. How can we change this? And the natural way into changing people's minds, changing people's opinions, getting them interested in conservation is through communication, whether that be filmmaking, presenting, writing. I'm not the best writer, so that will never be something I do.
Hey, be careful. Who would have thought you'd be presenting for the BBC when you were drunk on White Lightning in Halfords?
Not me. Not me. I tell you that right now.
We'll go back to this podcast when you're signing your first book, you know, presenting it at Waterstones, queues out the front door.
I don't think that'll ever happen, but if it does, all right, we'll go back to this. But, you know, and I think because my route is so unlike so many other people's, you know, wildlife filmmaking has always been an elitist subject. You know, you have to have money to get into it. You've got to have a nice camera when you're 17, or, you know, and it's always been the same class of people doing it. And I think one of the reasons that I've had the success I've had so quickly is because I actually care, and I'm just a normal person, you know, and I think I know my audience on social media, a lot of them, they're not wildlife people. They're just normal people. And I don't know if they follow me because of the way I talk, or because I clearly am just a normal person. I don't use the longest words. I'm just, you know, your average Joe. But whenever I post something about conservation, the amount of messages that I get about, God, I didn't realise that. Yes, I am going to email my MP. So it's about breaking out of the norm and the echo chamber that has been created in natural history for so long.
Yeah, and it's not only the echo chamber with preaching to the converted in terms of the audience, but also the people, like you say, working in the industry. And I know the industry is taking a look at itself, in terms of the demographic and the class, and that's good. And things are changing, probably a bit slowly, but these things do take time. And you're right. I think it's interesting also in stills photography about it being, that's very much what I used to say to, I run workshops, and when I talk to my clients there, I talk about how, in the film days, it really was an elite subject. You needed 100, 200 rolls of film to do, one shoot. Who's got the budget for that? The lighting, the assistants, everything else. But I think the good thing about now is digital. It really democratized photography. So you can actually get, a half decent camera, or you can go out with your phone and make a film and put it on social media and engage people. So that's definitely a positive thing. So, I mean, it sounds like you've kind of taken this unconventional journey, which is great. How did you deal with like imposter syndrome, when you're going through, doing your zoology degree, starting to present? Was that ever an issue for you? Did it ever bother you? Did you just get on with it?
Do you know what? I think we all suffer from the imposter syndrome in some way, shape or form. And I've been in many situations where, because I don't come from mummy and daddy's money and I don't go on all these trips, and, I've been in many situations where it's reminded that I'm not the right class to be involved in wildlife conservation or natural history. But you know what, Matt? I just don't care, because I know what I'm doing holds some significant weight, because, 150 to 200 species are going extinct every single day. Biodiversity is disappearing at an unprecedented rate, more so than ever seen before in the human race. And if I can reach a different demographic, maybe not your hardcore wildlife watchers, if I can reach some different people and change their minds towards conservation or educate them a little bit, then I'll be happy. So, you just have to not care what people think and remember why you're doing it. It's not for fame. It's not for money. It's because the world's in serious trouble. And that's what brought me to this career in the first place. And as long as I'm true to that, then people can say what they want, and they will. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. It's one of the downsides of social media, isn't it? It's great being able to reach people, but let's face it, there are some real idiots out there.
Do you know, the internet, they're obsessed with my teeth. Like,
really?
Oh God, everything I do, honestly, I could say badgers have landed on the moon and found unicorns, and and there'd still be about 6 comments about my teeth. I'd just like to set the record straight here. They're real. I haven't whitened them. There's nothing I can do about them. Can you just leave it, please? I can't do anything about it. It's like saying something about someone's eye colour. I can't do anything about my teeth, okay?
You heard it, people. Oh my God. I know you have to, it's great to hear that. It's great to hear. And, for the people wanting to get into presenting or filmmaking or whatever area in the natural history world, it is refreshing to hear, because I think that there are so many barriers that are put up, and you do have to be thick-skinned. You do have to just get on with it. It's very, very competitive, as we know. But more than ever, people are interested in it, and that's what we have to seize. And I think, like you say, being able to reach an audience that you wouldn't otherwise have been able to reach, perhaps without social media, and also with you and your personality, then that's progress. Because we definitely don't need to be preaching to the converted anymore.
And totally, we need as many different voices as possible. We're in a crisis. The more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. And it doesn't matter what your background is, where you come from. If you've got something to say and you're passionate about something, whether it be elephants to seagrass, it doesn't matter. Start talking about it, because I guarantee you will reach one person that then might pass on that message. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter how many followers you've got. Doesn't matter about any of that. It doesn't matter. Just start talking about it, because we need as many people as possible.
Yeah, that's right. And I think sometimes, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, conservation, and a good friend of mine who I interviewed a couple of years ago, his name's Josh, and he's the country director for Fauna and Flora International in Vietnam, and their main issue is tackling primate conservation. And he said this great thing that, if you think globally, it's just depressing. And that's another stat. What was it, 150 species a day, did you say? I mean, that's just
estimated 150 to 200.
Yeah, it's just it's just
24
depressing.
Hours.
Yeah, I mean, so every day you wake up, we've lost another 150 to 200 species. So if you think about that, well, there'd be no point in waking up. So you have to think locally. You have to just think about continuing to get the message out there, despite feeling like it's such an uphill struggle. And so I think that is really good. That's a really positive way of dealing with it, is actually just getting out there and doing something about it, because there's just frankly not enough time.
Totally.
But anyway, I was also interested because, in your journey to, become I'm sure some people would be interested, but you really cut your teeth, didn't you? As, working on the floor, running, doing, being a digital assistant. I had a look through your LinkedIn. So it wasn't, you're a bit of a character, you're good at presenting at a zoo, here's a BBC job. You really went through a process. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, after completing my zoology degree, I applied to do the Masters in Wildlife Filmmaking at UWE. Again, didn't think I'd get in. I was like, they're not going to want me. But I got in, and then straight after that, Tim Scoons, who is a legend of all legends, ex-BBC executive producer, he got in touch with me, and it was the time when Blue Planet 2 was going out, and he was heading up a digital campaign called Back the Bluebelt. So that was the minute I left the Masters, I was working straight away. And then a job came up on the Watchers to run their social media. And
Sorry, I should just say, for those who don't know, we're talking about Springwatch, Autumn Watch, Winter Watch. I know.
Autumn Watch and Winter Watch and all the other watches in between. And I kind of fell into the digital realm because I specialised in the illegal wildlife trade on social media. That's what I did my dissertation in. So the digital realm was something I've always been incredibly interested in. I mean, I studied it for a year, and illegal wildlife trading, which is some projects I've been working on for a very long time, hopefully going to get them off the ground finally this year after COVID pending. So I sort of fell into the digital realm. And then, so I got my first job on Springwatch, did that, loved it, learned so much. And then my contract ended, moved back to Cornwall. I was thinking, right, okay, what am I going to do? And then Springwatch rang me up and they were like, we need you. So I said, all right. Okay. And, I suppose this year for many people, working from home and remotely has been a whole new kettle of fish, but I've been doing it for years. So for me, it hasn't been a difference at all. I've always been in this office for years. It's getting a bit much now.
That's brilliant. And so you're also doing work outside of the BBC umbrella? Are you doing your own thing at the same time?
I am, yes. I've got some very exciting projects coming up this year.
What can you tell us? Are they all hush hush?
I can tell you. I'll tell you about the first one, which is something I've wanted to make for ages now. Again, COVID put a kibosh on many things, as it did for everybody. But this July, myself and my work partner, Ben, will be going to Iceland to make a film about Arctic foxes.
Oh,
climate
wow.
change, yeah. It's a really important story of conservation there, because Arctic foxes in their other habitats, when lemming populations are low, they're quite reliant on the sea ice, and they will actually follow polar bears. But of course, sea ice is disappearing, which will have effects on polar bears and Arctic foxes. But the Arctic foxes that live in Iceland, they're not reliant on sea ice. They're an island population. However, they're split into two ecotypes. So there's the western coastal population that is fully protected. They only got protected in, I think it's a few years ago, maybe 1994. But the rest of the Arctic foxes there, they're not protected. And the climate is starting to have a big effect on them. But the population of Arctic foxes in Iceland could become one of the most important populations in the world, because they don't have to worry about the sea ice disappearing. So it's a story I've wanted to tell for a very long time, and it's going to be an independent film, and I can't wait. This is COVID pending. I mean, I haven't booked the flights yet, but...
My God, if you could see Hannah's face right now, she's like a little girl, on Christmas Eve, just very, very excited to get out there. Now I understand why people comment on your teeth.
Oh, I know, it's a nightmare. There's nothing I can do about it. I've got a big mouth, people, deal with it.
That's really great. I mean, when, I asked about the independent filmmaking, because I think that's, it's a really interesting opportunity for, again, people that don't have commissions, just go out and make their own stuff. But then the hardest part is trying to sell this or get this stuff broadcast. What kind of route will you take with this? Will you go straight to the BBC, or will you look for other outlets?
No, I think this is, I'm going down the route with my own stuff to get, we've got funding from elsewhere, like conservation charities or brands and stuff, because I mean, we can't afford to go and make our own films. So it's about working within charities that, okay, so that can sit on that platform. We can work with you in this way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And some of the films I'm making this year, I don't really want to sell them for broadcast. I want to tell the unfiltered, non-PC version of the stories.
Yeah.
Which in some cases doesn't make it all right for broadcast. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah. And this is one of the great, the great ironies of it, the blue chip flagship series that of course are so good and so important, that inspire so many people. But I remember experiencing this for the first time. I think what you're talking about was when did you see the documentary Grizzly Man? It came out in 2003. It was all about this guy Timothy Treadwell, who this crazy guy who lived in Alaska, and he claimed he was protecting the bears. And this was and then he ends up getting killed and eaten by one. And it was it was an inevitability. But the story was amazing. It was a Werner Herzog film, and he put it together using all of Timothy Treadwell's own footage, just shot on a camcorder. And remember, this is like pre-digital. It was on a kind of pretty budget camcorder. But this guy got some extraordinary footage of these bears, like very unprofessional, but just raw. And that's what was so incredible. And there was this whole sequence in the film with one camera, no slow motion, no flashy angles, of these two bears that came to blows. Now, as you probably know, it doesn't often happen. It's usually posturing and they size each other up. But these two were evenly matched. And it was so difficult to watch because these bears were basically tearing chunks out of each other. And it was raw, it was unedited, it was brutal. And then he went over to the site when they'd finished. fighting. In fact, during the fight, there was so much testosterone and so much anger and so much force that one of the bears crapped itself, basically. And I was thinking, wow, would you see that, in 100 frames per second on a BBC documentary? I doubt it. But he went over to the site where they'd been fighting, and he was just like, oh my God, it looks like, 2 tractors have been here and just torn up the ground. And there were chunks of bear flesh and fur everywhere. And I was thinking, yeah, this stuff happens, doesn't it? We don't get to see this. So I think, yeah, it's an antidote to the other side and doing it unedited, and in a way, it's perhaps more of a truthful way of telling the story.
It is, definitely. But I mean, you look at natural history programming is so important. Like, there has never been a more important time for natural history programming to reach the millions that it does. But you look at, the effect that Blue Planet 2 had. It was called the Blue Planet 2 effect, wasn't it? And the digital team that worked alongside that and what they did. I mean, the series was phenomenal as a TV series, but it was all of the extra bits that ran alongside it that made it what it was. And that team, just hats off to them. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, we need to be doing that with every single flagship natural history program, all natural history programs. We need to create that noise and that investment from people all over the world. Like, oh, I didn't know that happened, or, oh God, that's really bad. I want to find out more about that. And that could be in a simple Instagram post or a simple cut down on a Facebook page. We need to create the Blue Planet 2 effect with every single program, It's
almost like these programs need to be campaigns, don't they? That's it, to affect, some kind of change. Well, this is really exciting that you're going to be making a film about foxes, because of course we need to talk about foxes. This is how we first connected last year. Hannah and I we did a digital Springwatch short, and then we've also done something for BBC Earth together, which I don't believe has been released yet, but both of them around foxes. And it was great when Ben got in touch and mentioned, oh, you'll be doing this with Hannah, one of our presenters, and her favourite animal is foxes. I was like, oh, this is great. And then when we were on camera together, you were wearing your wonderful fox shirt and I had my fox mug. We were like a couple of geeks dining out on foxes. So it goes back to this fantastic Mr. Fox book, but they're your favourite animal, is that right?
Slightly obsessed, have been since I was little, absolutely love them. And you know what, I remember we spoke about this last year. I had never seen a real countryside fox. Well, no, I'd seen a couple, once from a train and once at like 3:00 in the morning when I was coming home from a nightclub drunk, but that doesn't count. I could have been a person for all I know. But it was last year, managed to track down my first countryside fox den, and I spent hours. I mean, one day I sat in the hedge for, I think it was about 12, 14 hours, and I got a glimpse of the vixen at like 9:00 at night, really far away, couldn't take a photograph, couldn't believe it. But they are just fantastic animals. And do you know what I find really special about not just foxes, but badgers and deer? It's the feeling that it gives you, that almost primeval feeling. If there's wolves or bears, just knowing that there are these large mammals. I love that. And that we can coexist, and they're just out there doing their bit. I love knowing where my fox den is. I love knowing where the badger set is, and that excitement. If we could bottle that love and excitement for having large mammals roam the countryside with us, then we wouldn't have a problem with persecution. I don't.
Yeah, it's funny that, I mean, persecution is like the complete opposite of that feeling. And I love how you describe it of, you're sort of holding your chest, because you kind of feel it in your chest. And it makes me think of, I don't know if you've read Feral, George Monbiot's book. It's such a good book. And there's a whole chapter in it about Every year there's a new story in like the Star or the Express about, I don't know, the Beast of Bodmin Moor, and it's always a cat, isn't it, or some animal that it never is because there's never any evidence for it. But he talks about how, because our countryside is so depleted, we hunted all of our large carnivores, but how there's still a need, like within us, for a thrill, and that is why, when we walk in the forest, even though we know we're not going to get eaten by anything, perhaps there's a chance that, the Beast of Bodmin Moor's out there, that, maybe there is a wildcat still that has gone undetected. And actually it's part of our DNA, it's part of our makeup and part of the thrill of just being out in nature. And I think how you describe that is great, isn't it? Just knowing that those animals are out there doing their thing.
Totally. And that's, I think, what has always drawn me to foxes so much, is because they are large mammals, and just to know that they're out there. And it's that feeling. I'm getting it now when I'm thinking about it. I'd love to see one just walking past my window. I live on a council estate, so that's not going to happen. Or maybe it would, But
if it would in London, it would if
exactly,
you were in London.
Yeah. That's it. But they really are so special, and the fact that they're still persecuted, it's beyond me. 85% of the British public are opposed to fox hunting. It's illegal. I mean, come on, guys, read the room. This is so Victorian times. What are you doing? Do you know what I mean? It's mind-boggling to me. It really
100%. Yeah. I mean, my hope is, this year with Zoom meetings being exposed, with all the huntsmen and a lot of licenses being revoked, COVID, being a big interrupter. So in the short term, that's a good thing. Quite a few hundred foxes probably survived, but also the fact that it's back in, the public eye, it's in the media. And I mean, I think it's also, this comes back to a whole class debate as well, doesn't it? And I think that's what's also so fascinating about the fox. The fox, perhaps represents, the peasant, and sort of outwitting
Essex girl.
The the fox is the Essex girl, outwitting the ruling class. Oh my goodness!
Name of my book, which I'll never write.
I would definitely buy that book.
Do you know what? I found this fox then with the help of my friend Dave, who he's very much me and my friend Dave, we're the only two people sort of that I know down here that are really into wildlife, and we share all of our spots and stuff because no one else is crazy enough to want to sit in a hedge for 14 hours. But I know the place where I found a couple of fox dens now with him, I know why they're there, because I won't give away the location, but it's so inaccessible and it's in a valley. And to get to where they are, you have to cross sort of, bog areas for at least 45 minutes. And we call it Fox Valley. I've seen about 20 different foxes there. And there's 3 different families that we found last year. And it's because no one can get to them.
Yeah, they're clever. They're smart. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about this, the effort that you've made just to see one fox, and actually on social media you've got some really beautiful pictures, because subsequently obviously you spent a lot of time there. I feel like a cheat. I go 10 minutes up the road, and or not even that, I'm in my garden studio now, they come and hang out on the roof there. It's so unfair. The countryside fox photographer has to work really, really hard.
It is unfair, I'm not going to lie. The second this is all over, I'm coming for a visit. Wouldn't that be nice? So you can just have a cup of tea, and just watch them.
That has happened. Yeah. That has happened. Yeah.
See, that's not right.
You can come and have a cup of tea and watch my foxes. Definitely when the lockdown is done. Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah. So you talk about being involved with charities and making films for charities, but you yourself are an ambassador for quite a few charities now.
Yes, yeah, I am. Wildlife Trust being one, that are, they're a fantastic charity. Everything that they stand for, believe in and campaign for, their fingers on the pulse of everything, and it's an honour to be an ambassador for them. It really is. But also the UK Wild Otter Trust, the Cornish Seal Sanctuary, Prickles and Paws Hedgehog Rescue. You know, some of they're more local to me, but the work that they do at rescuing, rehabilitating poorly orphans, it's just the people that actually do the work on the front line. If ever you get bogged down and like, oh God, why am I doing this? You just go and spend a day with the people that actually work on the front line in our charity sector within the UK or wherever you may live. And you see the work that's going on. You're like, yeah, do you know what? These people give up their time day in, day out to protect our species. That's important. I want to help them. I want to help them do their job because their job is really important, you know? So
it's brilliant. And I mean, what does an ambassador do? I mean, you know, what are your role for these charities?
Just basically, you know, be involved in their campaigns, be involved in their meetings, push whatever they've got going on at the moment. I mean, it was during COVID, you know, the Cornish Seal Sanctuary had to completely close. So I was doing posts for them. Managed to get Prickles and Paws Hedgehog Rescue on the telly, so that was good for them. It's just about doing what we can, and we were planning, myself and one of my best friends, Sophie Pavel, we did a huge big charity walk for the Wildlife Trust, not last year, the year before now. God, it's so nuts. We've lost a year, haven't we?
We really have.
We did a massive charity walk raising money for the Wildlife Trust, and we were planning to do another one in 2020, but of course that didn't happen. But hopefully we're going to pick that up again this next year. It's just being a voice for the charity, raising funds when you can. Really want to get stuck into more fundraising this year, but of course it's a bit insensitive because there's so many people have lost their jobs and have been affected by COVID. It's a tricky one. How do you get the tone right? You know, can you give us some money to support hedgehogs when they might have lost their jobs? So it's another one. It's reading the room, isn't it? But and just keep talking and pushing on social media about issues of conservation, making people fall in love with wildlife, so that then hopefully they feel like it's a part of them, so they can get on board with supporting it as well, you know?
Yeah, and I think maybe it's about the messaging, isn't it? Which of course I'm sure they do tactfully, but you know, you say, we know everybody's had a really tough year. You know, spare what you can, because these charities and organisations do still need money, and they've been affected hugely over the last year, because it's the first thing to go, isn't it? Yeah. Is your spare cash that you're going to give to a charity. You think, actually, I need that now. Yeah. So yeah. No, well, yeah, the more we can do for charities in the coming year, the better. But hearing you talk about your work as an ambassador, social media, presenting with the BBC, making your own films, you've also got a husband and a dog. How do you maximize your efficacy across all of this work, Hannah? You know, how do you feel you can be, you know, really effective as a campaigner, a presenter, and all the other things you do?
Matt, I have the most unhealthy work-life balance of anybody that I know. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. Husband thinks I'm a lunatic, like a lunatic. I get up at 5 a.m. every single day. I have done for years. Even when it's a weekend and I'm supposed to be having time off, I'll still be doing something, because I think it's really, really important. You know, we've only got one life. I'm not going to be around forever. We are at a serious, serious crossroads. What we do in the next 20 years towards our environment, even in the next 10 years, will shape the future of the human race and every single living thing on this planet. So, you know, if that means me working like a lunatic, people see a lot of the front-facing stuff I do, and they don't realise that I'm constantly doing stuff as well behind the scenes that might not be front facing, researching or working on other projects, working with charities, which is just as important, if not more important, than the front facing stuff I do. Do you know what I mean? It's like helping people get it right. And so, yeah, I don't really have a lot of time for anything else.
No time for a
lie. And I
lie-in.
get up at 5 a.m. every day. Take Isabel out, who's my absolute world, and then I'll get up at 5 a.m. every day unless I'm hungover. Then that doesn't happen. But yeah, it's crunch time, and I've sort of fallen into this path, and I've got to just give it my all because it's important, you know.
And do you have anything outside of it? Obviously, apart from, you know, going on beautiful walks with your dogs, and that explains all the wonderful sunrise pictures as well that we get to see on your social media. So yeah, we're going to put all the links up for your social media for the people that don't follow Hannah already. Yeah, she's got some great pictures. And I said, God, yeah, you're up early every day, aren't you?
I'm up early and I'm out and about. Well, before this, Matt, I mean, like I said at the beginning, you know, I used to be an avid party girl, and I still do love a party, and I love a festival. You know, I love that. I live for that. I always will. But of course, this last year, that kind of hasn't really happened. So, in regards to your question, is there anything else outside of this? No, not at the moment, because I can't go to the pub. Okay, but come summer, when we've all had our vaccinations and we're allowed to go to gatherings again, I will be going to every single gathering, and I will be hugging everybody all the time. When we can hug again, that's it. I'm going to sit on people's laps in meetings. You know?
I know, it's another one of those simple things, isn't it? Like to be able to hug someone, that connection that we just thrive for. It's
really, really difficult. I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, moved my mum to Newquay, not last year, the year before, because she's getting older and I wanted her to be closer to me. And I've been going to see her, but I've just been going and standing in her garden. So she's at her kitchen window, and I've been in her garden putting out her badger food and stuff. And just not being able to have a cuddle.
Yeah, it's brutal, isn't it? Really, really hard. So, I mean, you know, one of my questions was going to, how do you remain positive in times of you know, biodiversity being on such a downward spiral, environmental issues, climate change, of course. I mean, I think you kind of answered that already just by working so hard at it. But is there anything else that kind of stops you from, you know, screaming into a pillow? Or maybe you do that. I don't know. Maybe that does help.
Do you know what, Matt? It is difficult. And sometimes I will disappear from my social media for like a week or so, and people are like, oh, where are you? Are you okay? And it's usually because I do suffer with eco-anxiety really, really badly. And sometimes it overtakes me that much. I don't know how to communicate it to the audience that I have online. So I'm just like, do you know what? Don't say anything at all, because you're going to go on a rant, you know? and that could be good, that could be bad. So sometimes I have to take a step back and process these thoughts in my own head. But then you have to focus on the positives and the positive stories, you know, because out of the 95% of absolute shit that's happening in the world, we have to cling on to the good stuff. We have to, you know. And it's thinking about memories as well. I mean, one film that I made in South Africa a few years ago for BBC Earth was, we covered the story of Tandy, a rhino, the first rhino ever to survive a poaching attack. And she's gone on to have 4 calves.
Oh, wow.
Amazing story. And that one story is one animal, yeah? That one story went around the world. And because it was a positive story with one animal, it reached millions and millions of people and completely changed the face of rhino conservation as we know it. And there's stories like that are so, so important, and just I cling on to them. I'm like, well, hang on, this is bad, but think about that. And also clinging on to when you've had experiences with wildlife, close encounters, that seeing the foxes last year, really, really special. I'm like, oh God, why am I doing this? It's another rainy day. I'm stuck in front of the computer. It's funny when we're working on Springwatch, especially this last year. We're constantly telling people, get outside. It's really good for you. Go and see some wildlife. We don't see any ourselves for like 2 months. I see it coming through on the vision mixer, but that's it,
Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. Go outside, it's good for you, but I can't. But no, it's clinging on to those positive stories and your personal experience as well, those magical experiences that remind you why you do this. And I do, even when I'm really, really busy, I will make myself go outside. I will. Yeah. And that's the beauty of having Isabel, my dog, because she needs a walk. So I have to walk her. And it does make a huge difference. Sometimes if I've been stuck in for 3 days on the computer, I'm like, and husband's been walking her, I'm like, no, I've got to go and I've got to get outside. And it does make a difference. And it does.
It really
and
does.
It reminds you why you do it. You look at the sunset, you're like, God, our natural world is phenomenal. This cannot disappear,
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's so inspiring hearing you talk. It's great. And actually, I've wanted to ask you this earlier, but I'm still curious as to who your influences were when you were growing up, and did you have and do you continue to have any mentors or people that inspire you?
Do you know what you sent me these questions before, and I looked at that, and that was a tricky one for me, because every day I'm inspired by something different, somebody else, a different campaign. I mean, you post a photo of a fox picture, I'm like, oh, got to go and see my foxes. But I think growing up, I always remember, do you remember David Attenborough's Wildlife on One? It used to be on a Thursday night at 8:00. And I remember when me and my brother were little, we had gymnastics on a Thursday night, and Mum always used to come and pick us up and rush us home because I had to watch David Attenborough at 8:00. Brilliant. And then, so that was always there. But as I carried on through my zoology degree, Diane Fossey, she was a huge influence and inspiration, because, she didn't study zoology. Her path into becoming one of the world's most renowned primatologists, she was just an ordinary person. She went to Africa because she was interested in going there and wanted to find out more about it, And I think she borrowed money. It cost her a year's salary. I think it was about £8,000, $8,000 she borrowed to go to Africa for the first time. I didn't know that. It's amazing. Yeah, she studied, she was an occupational therapist. That's what she did. And for me, always just classing myself as a very average, normal person, Diane Fossey was a very average, normal person who, her legacy speaks for itself, what she did for mountain gorillas. And that whole journey, she wasn't even a zoologist. So for me, she's always been a massive, massive inspiration. Like, if she can do it, if she can change people's minds, then why can't I? And why can't anybody else listening to this? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter where you're from. You could be a nail technician. You might end up saving African elephants. Who knows? You never know what path you're going to end up. Yeah, that's great, because there are all sorts of barriers, aren't there? Just, we talked about them earlier, class, race. But I think it's interesting hearing you talk about Diane Fossey, because I was thinking, there will be people listening to this that will think, well, if Hannah can do it, I can do it. There are no better. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, but that's, your story's great and inspiring. So listen, we're going to slowly wrap this up. I'm sure you've probably got to get back in front of your computer. No, you've got to go outside. You've got to go outside. And I'm waiting for the snow. I'm waiting for
Is it coming? Is it
The
coming?
sun's come out now. I've had enough. If I see any more snowy photos, I'm not going to be able to go on social media today. I'd love some snow. I'd love it, but it's not. It's not coming.
It's just not the right climate down there, is it? Too wet, too warm. We've touched on this briefly already, but I ask all my guests this, advice for younger people wanting to get into this field, and whether that's being a photographer, filmmaker, or presenter, or doing everything like you do. Where do they start? How do they not get put off by it being an elite subject?
I think, with social media, it can be used in a really wrong way, but it is also an amazing tool that everybody now has access to. And just start doing it. Even if you think, or even if you're scared about it, or you don't think anybody's going to listen to you, you'll find your audience. They'll find you eventually. Just start doing it. Start talking about it. Say yes to everything. Yes, you end up working 7 days a week and getting up at 5 a.m., but just start doing it, and do it for the right reasons as well. If you're getting into wildlife and wildlife conservation for money or fame, believe me, you've picked the wrong industry. What is that saying? They said, find a job you love and you'll never work a day again for the rest of your life. But underneath, it actually means work incredibly hard, work every single hour under the sun, don't get paid enough for it, and basically have no social life. That's what it means. But no, honestly, do just start doing it, and you'll find your voice, find your way. I'm learning every day. Every single day I'm learning. Sometimes I'll do something and it doesn't work. Sometimes I'll do something and it flies and you didn't think it would do so well, So just start doing it and start saying yes, and get involved in your local conservation charities, doorstep wildlife, because no matter where you live, whether it's the countryside in an urban environment, you will have a local wildlife rescue centre or a charity. That start getting involved with them, see how they work, help out, because you will automatically be surrounded by like-minded people that will spur your interest and give you more ideas and more passion,
Yeah, I think it's great to hear. It's also great to hear, you're talking about like not getting into it for the money, because I think still it's changing a little bit, but people automatically assume, oh, Hannah's on the telly, she must be loaded. And here we are.
You know what, Matt? I wish that was true, darling. I really wish it was. Unfortunately, it's not.
Those teeth are not natural. They must have cost a fortune.
That's what annoys me. That's what people assume. I'm like, no, mate, they're homegrown. I haven't got it. You know what I mean? I'm doing this because I actually care about
Homegrown teeth.
Yeah.
That should be your handle, actually, shouldn't it? Under all your social media. Homegrown teeth.
But no, do it for the right reasons. And coming back to your question about imposter syndrome, I do get a lot of 99% of the stuff I get online is overwhelmingly positive and supportive, but I do get a lot of nasty stuff as well. And then people assume, it's money and it's fame. It's not. But if you come back to your morals and remember why you're doing it for these reasons, because we're at an absolute crisis. If you keep coming back to that, then you will do well, because you won't care what anybody else thinks. You'll just crack on and do it because you know the reason why you're doing it. Yeah. It's not for money. It's not for fame. It's not to impress anybody. It's not to get white sparkly teeth. It's because you actually want to make a difference. And if you hold on to that, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and that chimes with what Joanne MacArthur was talking about, who I've interviewed her twice now on this podcast. And I find it fascinating because, she goes into slaughterhouses and fur farms and documents that side of animal photojournalism. And it's harrowing work. She's been doing it 30 years, suffered from PTSD. And, it's the big question that everyone asks her, how do you cope? And she says that she basically makes it not about her. And she's there to do the work. It's there, and it's about the animals. So you really have to make it not about you.
Definitely.
And I think that's really good advice moving forward. Do it because, yes, you love it and you're passionate about it, but you're doing it for the betterment of conservation, the betterment of that specific animal. And that's what we really need, ultimately.
Totally. I mean, wildlife conservation and the environment is bigger than all of us. Let's be honest, we've only got one planet to live on, and it's in trouble. So let's put the egos aside and just get on with the work, because we're kind of running out of time,
That's right. Right, my final question. Tell us your hopes, wishes and dreams for the future.
Oh God.
Wow, do you think about what you're going to be doing in 5, 10, 15 years at all, or you just head down? It's deep. Yeah, it's just getting into therapy world.
Oh, we're going deep now. To be perfectly honest, the last few years, things have just happened for me so quickly, and it's been one thing after another. I haven't even had time to take a break and sit back and take stock and be like, God, okay, this is what you've done. Where do you want to go next? I don't know. I really don't know. What I do know is that I want to head more into conservation filmmaking. I mean, the stuff I do, it's great and I love it, and it's been I've had fantastic opportunities, but I really want to be telling more stories, the real stories. So that's kind of where I want to be headed within the next 5 years, and it's starting to happen now.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing it already with these films. Can't wait to see them.
I don't know what I have no idea where I'll be in 5 years. I might be back cleaning pub toilets. Who knows? Who knows? And if I am, that'll be all right. Do you know what I mean? It will be okay. I know where my fox den is. I'll be quite happy.
That's brilliant. When in the kind of hopes, wishes and dreams question, I never think that I'd get the answer that you'd be cleaning toilets in 5, 10 years. But yeah, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with that. Hannah, it's been so lovely talking to you. And finally, we did it. This is great. And we're going to put all the links up. Hopefully there'll be some people that listen to this who don't know you, and we'll start following you on social media and watching you on all the watches and catch up with all the films you're doing. But I love your work. I love your energy, and I'm sure the listeners will too. And we will have to catch up again maybe in a year or so, when you've got the bit between your teeth, you've been out there, you've made all these films. It's going to be really exciting to see the content that comes back. And we know we love the British wildlife, but it's definitely time for something new for you and for everyone else. So thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
Wow, what a start. And again, thanks so much to Hannah for giving up her time, for me, and in turn, all of you to hear her inspirational story. And time again, when listening to the stories of all my guests over the years, one thing that rings true for all of them is just how hard they work. 5 a.m. every day, perhaps not for everyone, but a testament to Hannah's determination to make a difference in her community and the wider public. And I can't wait to see the film she produces once she's set free from lockdown. So head over to her page on the podcast section of my site to find out more. And if you don't already, follow her on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And please share this podcast and her story with your friends, family, and loved ones. Leave a review on iTunes. The podcast is now on Spotify. It's also on Google Play, Stitcher, and many more. And don't forget to check out naturettl.com for a wealth of information and inspiring content. Use the code MAT10 for a 10% discount on all ebooks. And until the next time, thanks again for listening.